It's also amazing how much fun the world of Python has inflicted upon us because of all of these issues with packaging and tools and stuff like that that we're sorting through. I'm Paul Everitt from Agendaless Consulting. This is the Python 3 or Python 2 pyramid tutorial for web development. If you thought you were in a fun tutorial, you can get up and walk out now if you're in the wrong one. We will try to have fun. This is a tutorial intended to show you a little bit about a lot very quickly. It's also intended to be a tutorial where you do a lot of the work. And I put stuff up on the screen where I talk about what we're about to do. Then you go off and do it. And then we come back and we talk about what you just did in a series of steps, each organized around some of the major topics in web development. Raise your hand if you had ever used Python 3 before 3 days ago. Okay, so we have 5 liars. Raise your hand if you have put anything into production with Python 3. No way. Yeah. Okay, you, yes, but what did you do?
Just some development scripts.
Did you?
Parsing text.
Okay. Consuming or providing? Really? Where it actually has to continue running day after day? For months. Wow. Well, at some point it'll be years. But right. And so anybody else done Python 3? All right. So we joked last year I did this tutorial for Pyramid and aimed it at Python 3 instead of Python 2. And we kind of joked that we were doubling the number of Python 3 people in the universe. So let's see if we can triple it now. But times have changed, things have gotten a little bit better, and hopefully at the end of this course you'll know about Pyramid, but for those of you new to Python 3, you'll feel comfortable with that as well. The way that this tutorial is organized is there's a URL with all the class material. All this class material comes from a longer, more thorough version with unit tests available at that URL, which if you're following along on this URL, which you need to be doing so that you can see all this material and cheat with cut and paste, you can click on that link and see the full tutorial and the quick tour that goes with it, the shorter version. This is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to do something the simplest, don't have to think of it way, slightly harder, but still not thinking about it too much, and teach you the wild, fun world of Python packages, which is an important step before you can get into full-scale web development, and then a bunch of stuff about Pyramid. So, before I begin, does anybody have any questions other than the misery of the setup? Does anybody have any questions about what we're doing today or anything special you would like talked about? When we get to that section, that one, remind me, and I will talk a little bit more about more advanced aspects to that. Right. Right, right. So that's a good point.
I was hoping to be able to have a Pyramid web app that runs on Bluehost, which is a hosting company. So if there's any tips you could give.
During the break, remind me. Okay. And remind me to take the break, because I'll just keep talking until tomorrow. During the break, remind me, and I'll go look up Bluehost and see if there's anything special about them. Okay. Any other questions or points? Raise your hand if you've ever done Python, if you've ever done web development. Okay. If you've done Python web development. What have you done Python web development with? Pyramid. Anything else? A little bit of Django. We got to make you be the tutorial instructor next time. God, you're more pure than I am. How many people are Django people? How many people are Flask people? How many people or some people not listed? What have you been doing? What have you been working with?
First we got a home maintenance system,
The best.
and we are switching to Everitt now.
All right, good. Oh, good. Maybe you can get Reddit and Dropbox to go with you. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, those are both Pylon's sites.
Just Joomla.
Joomla.
From PHP.
All in. Sweet. Okay, well, let's begin. We have done the requirements, but I will try and go through this just in case there are still some things to be done. This is a tricky thing to do because we've got Python 2 and Python 3. We've got Python 3.3 and Python 3.4, which introduces a variation. We have easy install versus pip. We have good systems like OS X and Linux and other systems like Windows. Sorry about that. That introduce some complexities like binary components and stuff like that. And we have to try and, we meaning Steve and I, have to try and write instructions that document every possibility without scaring the crap out of everybody. And I don't think we've done either one of them. So what I may do in the future is just rewrite all these instructions for Python 3.4 and just make you install Python 3.4, which obviously still has some work to do on it. So we went through these various things and we asked you to create something called a virtual environment. A virtual environment in Python is, if you're familiar with BSD jails or other Docker or LXC containers or Solaris zones or whatever, it's an isolated unit of distribution for your Python project. And it's a place where the only stuff that gets put in there, the only external packages are stuff you put in there. So when we're doing a tutorial and we're asking you to install SQL Alchemy and all these other things, we want to make sure the thing that you're using is the thing we told you to put in there, not something you inherited from somewhere else. We already saw how that kind of bit a little bit on stumbling across a Python that wasn't the Python you expected. So it's a little bit of extra work, but it's a way to really develop in isolation, knowing that you have the right packages. Okay, so we've gone through all this stuff. Let's go ahead and begin. So this will be the first step that you actually do something. Again, remind me in 70 minutes to take the break. And this is a way to do micro framework, small scale, Flask-like. I'm only going to write 10 lines and forget about it, and it'll die on its own in 24-hour fruit fly projects. What's the smallest possible thing we can do to have a URL that answers the request from our web browser? As a way to kind of catch up a little bit, I'll let you read through the background on your own. So each one of these steps in the tutorial talks a little bit about the theory, and then what we want to accomplish. And then it has a series of steps of things that you repeat yourself on your own computer, finishing by running in a browser. Some of you will finish before other people. So you can read the analysis part, make sure you understand it, and then see if you can answer the extra credit questions. And you get a brownie and 2 gold stars. So let's go ahead and begin. Make a directory called Hello World, go into it, and put a module called app.py with these contents. In the beginning, feel free to type it yourself. Later, when it becomes burdensome, feel free to copy and paste. Yeah. Okay, so go ahead and begin, and I will walk around, and later Steve will walk around and help. Yes?
Do we need to do activate or anything like that?
We are presuming that you don't do activate because we are, in our instructions, explicitly pointing to your virtual env's command. But if you have done activate, you can, don't be stupid, Paul. Now, this will be funny because I won't be able to reach it. You can, if you've already done activate, you could leave out that part and just say Python app.py. Want to try and... You sure?
That's all that I can.
What we can do during the break is teleport you into the future. So do you mind installing Python 3.4 for Windows? Go to python.org, download the binary, install it, and let's see what happens. I'm going to be walking around, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody that has never done Python before? You have done Python before? There are some people for whom this syntax, line number 11, is a weird thing. It just means that this is the code to execute when the Python interpreter runs this module as a file. So we do a couple of things. We tell Pyramid to configure itself. We tell it where its view is located and the route for that view. And we tell it to make a WSGI app and serve it on this port number. Okay, on to the extra credit. Anyone know the answer to number 1? Close, but why is the syntax there? Do you know the... Ding, ding. Now, why did I do print space parentheses? Anyone? Anyone? Because it makes it work under Python 2. Python 2 doesn't have a print function as a print statement. So in Python 2, Python looks at that. Python 2 says print space. Okay, I'm going to print the result of that unpacking of a tuple kind of thing. Yes, a trick, a dirty, rotten trick. Did anyone try to return a string of HTML or numbers or anything like that? So Pyramid will kind of look and figure out and set the response type, the content type, the MIME type correctly. Let's see. In putting a print statement in the middle will cause something to be output, but then if you make an error, it will cause the exception to be outputted. That then helps you go debug where your problems are. Anyone as old as me and knows what this comes from? No, way before that. You're in the wrong decade. Yes. Who said CGI? So you're old. Good. All right. What's CGI mean? Common Gateway Interface. In 1994, I did my first web server in 1993. I did www.navy.mil. And at that time, if you wanted to write scripts for your web server, you had to hard code it to the CERN HTTP server or the NCAA Mosaic HTTP server, and then they got together and made a common gateway interface so you could extend the web using the world's worst protocol. That then became very, very famous and led to the dynamic web. So 2 brownie points for you, my old and distinguished friend. Let's go to the next one. If everyone could follow along, click next to go to the next package. By the way, this is all available online with unit tests so that you can hate yourself at a slower pace. Let's do a Python package using the Python concept of making a package that can be distributed to other people. This is also something that is in a little bit of flux, but when we develop this way, we tap into some of Pyramid's superpowers. I will let you read on your own about the background on Python packages, also the misery of Python packages. And so in this, we'll have you do the minimum it takes to make a Python package and the minimum it takes to get that Python package installed into your project and used in the work that you're doing in this step. So if you could, start with this, go up a directory, make a new subdirectory called package, et commence. Or is it commencer? Which one's better? To us. Commencer. Okay. you can set up a Python installation for Pyramid while on the phone with your healthcare provider. What can you not do? And please read through the analysis on your own so that I don't have to talk about it on video. Not that we didn't expect it to, but
I'm getting the hang of switching the backslashes and putting percent instead of dollars. Last year I had my set up as Linux, and I needed it to be Windows, and this year I have Windows and I need it to be Linux. Maybe next year I need 2 laptops. Or have
buy a Mac.
have a, yeah, oh yeah, buy a Mac.
Done? Done? Okay. We'll give 4 or 5 more minutes on this. If you fall asleep and you need something to wake you up. Okay. Success? The children's show Dora the Explorer. We were living in France when it first came out, and so she says we're winning or something like that, but I always remember, j'ai gagné, j'ai gagné, j'ai gagné. My French is great when it's 2-year-olds that I'm talking to. He just asked the question, and you're going to get the answer in the next step. We're going to switch from using Python to run our stuff to using the Pyramid server command runner, and it has a -- reload option that will scan all of your files and watch for something to change and restart itself. Okay, here we go. If you're still typing, that's okay. I will cover this boring stuff, and then you can get caught up when we go on to the next step. So here's what we did. We made a Python package. We made this directory into a package by putting a setup.py file in there. And once we did that, that kind of gives us the opportunity to do something we can distribute with other people. We don't really care about other people right now. We just want to use this package in development mode in our local installation. So we told Setup Tools to install the current working directory as a package in development mode. And it does some weird stuff that it's better off if we don't talk about. So we made the directory for our source code in this package tutorial, a subdirectory. the world of Python since 1.5.2 maybe has had this concept that you can turn a directory into a package by putting a special file in there. Special file is called under init under. Even if it's empty, that's okay. It doesn't have to have anything in it. The presence of it turns that into a namespace that Python can then import. And then we went back and put basically the same code that we had previously for our work. So in the analysis, I talk a little bit about all this weird Python mumbo jumbo. This isn't pyramid stuff. This is stuff you have to learn when you're doing packages in Python. And this one is such a miserable question that I will skip over it. Any questions on Python packages and what we just did for Pyramid other than how do I reload my project? Anything you'd like to add about anything you've done with Pyramid and packages? Have you ever tried to explain it to someone? Okay. This is unfortunately, there are several miserable things that we've inherited from decades past in Python. I went to the first Python conference in 1994 when it was 20 people at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And I've seen some of these terrible temporary decisions that we're still paying the price for. And this is one of them about packaging and stuff like that. Hopefully it's getting better. All right. Now let's have a little bit more fun. This is the last eat your vegetables step. Once we get to this point, you'll have the broccoli behind you, and we'll speed up and get into the more interesting writing web application stuff. In this one, Pyramid has a big difference between it and other systems. It has a concept of configuration, separate from code. And the configuration system gives Pyramid a lot of its power, a lot of its extensibility, and a lot of its features. When you switch over to configuration-driven Pyramid, you can use this thing called pserv, which is the Pyramid server, the process runner, and point it at a configuration file, which then starts up all of your code, wires it together. So that's what we're going to do in this step. We're going to change our package to be aware of this style of development and tell the outside world, here's the place that you start, using something called an entry point. We're going to make the configuration file, the .ini file, and we're going to run the same app again using pserv rather than Python directly. So this is also the start of, instead of you starting from nothing, you copy the work you just did into a new directory doing cp-r. Under Windows, all right. So go ahead and begin, and let's see if this one has extra credit. Yes, this one has extra credit. So all you smarty pants can outsmart the teacher. The only thing that's different in this one is this entry points thing, I believe. Did he get you caught up?
He did.
All right, are you good? You need anything from me? Is it? Oh, I'm sorry. This is a pseudo standard that came up with it in the WSGI time, where a package can tell a WSGI server, WSGI server, here is the place that is my starting point. Because in the world of WSGI, you have WSGI apps that can run in any WSGI server. And so the application has to say, here's my entry point. Does that make sense? Okay. All cool for you? And you're a Sublime Text user, so you must be smart.
We use Pyramid, both her and I use Pyramid at SurveyMonkey. So we're not
You're a Survey Monkeyers.
totally newbies,
Oh, that's why you were so cool. Okay.
but we both are kind of unsure about some of this stuff.
Okay.
So we do mostly front end, so it's
All right.
But yeah, so far so good.
Okay.
Anything else, Troy? It's xcopy/e.
Oh, Xcopy. Oh, my old friend.
I couldn't remember the switch, I looked it up.
I'm surprised it needed a switch. Oh, thank you. Feel free to start cheating with the cut and paste. Of course, I'm sure all of you have already been doing that, but for the one or two of you, I can tell psychically, right? Cool.
P-serve problem.
Fresh one. Anaconda, huh? We'll do a cease and desist takedown on them, DMCA takedown. Doing all right? Need help? will go ahead and talk through this one before I do. Any questions? Okay, so let's talk about this mysterious configuration file thing. Why are we doing it? What is it? What is it for? Why do I have this complexity that I'm confronted with? What we're trying to do is let your code be its own code without hardwiring in stuff that people who use your code will then have to go fork your code in order to put it on a different port number, for example. This is like the DMZ between you and the people running your code. And you can put configuration knobs in your software, which is driven by the configuration file, and they own the configuration file and don't touch your software. So for example, in our previous stab at it, we had a whole bunch of code in here. And in our code, we said this is going to run on 6543. And if they already had something running on 6543, sucks for them. They'll have to go change it. We also hard-coded in which WSGI server we were using, the sample WSGI reference server, which is not a very good WSGI server. The Waitress Pure Python server is a good one. Mod WSGI, all these other things are other good choices of servers. So we took a bunch of stuff, which is wiring, not code, out of the code and put it into the configuration. And you as an application developer can extend that file and put your own knobs in there, such as what is the outgoing mail server for this software. And then your user can change that without changing the code. So in particular, what we did, and I'll scroll down a little bit to bring that back in view, was we had kind of a marrying point between this and this. So our configuration system app is something that the paster configuration, the INI thing, is a standard for them. And then main is the name that we advertised in our entry point, and we told that entry point, here's the code to go run. This is the thing that will make a WSGI application. Go run that thing, and it will give you back a WSGI app. So in tutorial, the under init had a main the under init had something that was executing on startup that returned the WSGI application. And then the server that goes with that, we wired it up with which WSGI server to use, which port number to use. This is more complexity than you need for Hello World. But when you start writing stuff where you plug in other people's software packages, a form library, a database library, an authentication system, a mail handling system, all of these plugins in the world of Pyramid are configuration enabled, and you can wire them up this way. You can also write your own code internal to a large and cool survey company so that you're at arm's length from each other. And it's very clear what people can adapt when you give them code. There is a way to kind of import an INI. There's an INI file from another file. So if you have, like, here's a very common use of this: development and production. You might have the debugging support or the automatic reload support or the this, that, and the other enabled in the developer build and not in the production build. So you have a development.ini file and a production.ini file. Yep. Not running at the same time. When you're doing development, you're not running the production server. You're running your development server. So that is where you can move some of the settings that are common to all the INI files to like a common.ini, and then load them in to each individual INI file, and that is possible. And it's a normal thing to do. Okay. So we talked about the analysis of how all these things call each other and why you might want to have all this flexibility. On to the first question. Well, this sucks. Why do I have to do all these push-ups? You don't have to do all these push-ups. We just showed you 2 examples where you can put it in your Python code if you want to. You don't have to use this configuration approach with pserv. And it's commonly done with development pyramid because there are tools and components that you can wire together with configuration. And we're going to see 2 of them at the end of this, a form library and a database library. Okay, hey, look, question number 2. So you've already got the extra credit for that? Okay, and I'll skip these next 2. Okay, you have a break in 2 minutes. Do you want to try and go through one more, or would you like to get the break early? Has this been 90 minutes? No, you have a break in 12 minutes. Let's go through it. Good, because we've got 12 more of these to go through, and these are the easy ones. The miserable part, Windows, is already done. So in Python web development, whether it's Django or Flask or Web2Py or maybe Ruby or any other systems, they all have this concept of a view, something that interacts with the web request. That's the topic of this section. And we will start the way that we always start from now on. We will copy the previous one so you have less typing to do because Paul cares about you. So go ahead and go through this one, and we will talk about it and get in line for our coffee before anybody else. And Steve and I will walk around and help people. My fabulous assistant, Steve. Was there anybody that didn't successfully complete the last section that would like to be teleported to the future? No? All right, great. And when the video is off, I can tell you jokes about Python past. For example, never get into a drinking contest with a company from Canada because they cheat. No, of course not. Mm-hmm. This way. Remember to read the analysis to understand the thing that you just did. I usually have a joke, my analysis is not your analysis, but it's not as funny as it. So, yeah, sorry. Stayed up all night studying for my urinalysis test. answer the reload thing? Was that in the last section, or is it in the? Okay. Yes, that was in the last one. When you run the pyramid app runner, pserv, instead of Python, it has an option --reload. --reload will watch everything in your directory, and if a file changes, it'll restart pyramid.
And that works. I tried it. I changed it to
Pyramid people are shocking.
and then I refreshed my browser and nothing changed.
Crazy talk.
I didn't have to restart the server.
Yeah. For once, in a good way.
Yes. Okay, so where's my PC?
We're here to amaze, unfortunately.
Okay, so here we go.
Amazement by the pound.
Where's it? Oh. Go back home.
Let me see if they've got coffee coming. You doing okay? Doing all right? Petri? You doing all right? Okay. Doing all right? Too easy, too simple? You need to take this to 11? We don't get into it, but I will give a demo whenever is the low energy moment this afternoon. of basically when all of you get up and go to the bathroom because the coffee has hit, when you come back, then I will give a PyCharm demo. But we can cover the virtual env part there. Mm-hmm. It's also possible that it's still running your previous one if you forgot to close it, but yes. And I will answer any questions, yeah. Okay, while Steve is helping Patrick, we will go ahead and go through this. Is there anyone else not finished? Okay, good. As the comment says, this got a lot shorter. You can now think of the under, and knit as kind of the bootstrapper. It's not the place for your code. It's the place that is the entry point that wires up all the rest of your code. And we took all the view stuff and moved it over to this Python module cleverly called views. Could be named anything, but it kind of makes sense to put things in something appropriately named. Our views module has everything focused on request and response. We might have another module called models for our model stuff, another stuff for security, another thing for events or whatever. And we use this decorator syntax now at viewconfig to make it a little bit easier to wire stuff up. Before, we were putting our views by calling the configurator directly, config.addView. Well, that kind of sucks when you have to do config.addView and then somewhere else is the view. Those two things get out of sync. Wouldn't it be cool to just leave a little dropping right by your view function that says, hey, I'm a view? And that's what we do. Now, for that to actually mean anything, it has to get registered with the configurator. How does the configurator do that? With this scan. So we told the configurator, go look in here for anything that looks like a registration. For example, the configuration of a view. There are other things that you can register with the configurator that will pick up in a scan. And this config.scan, you could do dot, and it might look through everything in all the directories below. So that's pretty cool. So that's what the scan does. We still left our routes up here because in Pyramid, the ordering of routes matters instead of the weighting of routes like in Flask, the priority of routes. So we had two different views, one that responds to a URL of slash, and one that responds to a URL of /howdy. Any questions on that? The ordering does matter because you might have, what if I just said slash there? If I said the home view should appear on the web as slash and the hello view should appear on the web as slash. In this case, there are two, this is a URL and this is a URL. What if we put two things at the same URL? The last one would win. Then you could reverse those two lines and it will be fine because they don't overlap. It's like that. Yep. Okay, there was somebody else that I think had a question that I was going to, you and I were talking about something? No, you and I were talking about the dot, okay. So why dot views? This is part of a semi-newish, meaning in the last decade, that's what I refer to as new in Python, way to do imports that are kind of relative imports using a dot. And so it says, find the views that is in this directory. Not something that might have been splattered into the Python path from somewhere far away. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's the analysis. We talked a little bit about imperative configuration versus declarative. In the previous example, we did imperative configuration. We said, hey, configurator, add a view right now, right here. Declarative is, I'm going to sprinkle some stuff around in some places, and hey, you come find me, and when you find me, go do something, would you? This seems to be the way everyone does things these days, because it keeps your configuration close to your code. Okay, and we answered the extra credit. Any questions? Sure. Mm-hmm. What do you think? It is, so the decorator does its decorating at module import time, I believe. But that doesn't necessarily mean it connects to the configurator. So it is looking for things and then doing the moral equivalent of that. The scan finds it and does that. And they both end up to the configurator, they both end up in the same result. Either way will lead to the same result. Exactly right. It is spelunking through your file system looking for stuff and calling it. The spelunking through your file system sounds like it has an impact on startup time, and it does, depending on how big your project is. Were you and I discussing something that I need? Oh, no, that was a PyCharm thing, right? Okay. Any other questions before break? All right. This is probably one of the most important parts, the concept of a view that is available at a URL and receives a request and generates a response. And so we'll look more into that in the next couple of sections. Go get your coffee before everybody else does. Hello. Yeah. Okay, let's begin. Who's awake? Caffeinated. I always get the afternoon slots. I usually get the afternoon slot on the last day. So everyone just really hates me, and I'm in between them and their beer, and so I just have to go fast. Okay, we just talked about pyramid and views and requests and responses, and we're writing code to respond to requests, and our code in Python is returning HTML strings. We're not going to write HTML right in the middle of our Python. That's a terrible place for it. Wouldn't it be cool if we had templates that we could load and put our code in our one place, our data in another place, and have the template run on the way out the door to generate the HTML? That's what this topic is about. Pyramid is the unopinionated framework. It doesn't make choices for you. It lets you make your own choices. It doesn't even include a templating language by default. You have to install one of the supported templating languages. Jinja 2, Mako, Chameleon are three of the more popular templating languages that people use. And this one we'll use Chameleon, and at the end we'll use Jinja 2. Yes? I'm not falling for that. Heard that one before. Yeah. See, that's why. I was going to say Jinja too. Yeah. Yeah. I think Jinja 2 is pretty popular because it has the same syntax as Django templates. So it's familiar in that regard, and it's the one that the Flask community uses. So it has a fair amount of support in tools like PyCharm and stuff like and other Sublime Text and things like that. A lot of documentation, it's kept up to date, etc. But they all are, so it's a matter of taste. But this is hard for me because Chameleon comes from the world of Zope, and I was a Zope guy, so I'm voting against my own constituency. Yeah. So you'll get two places to start in this tutorial, Chameleon and Jinja 2. Okay, in this one, we are going to learn about installing add-ons, extra packages that give Pyramid extra capabilities, which kind of demonstrates this whole point about configuration and configuration files and wiring code together from different groups of people, and in particular, the config.include function. So you'll be getting a package and then wiring it up for templating. And we will take the HTML out of our Python, put it in a separate file, and then use that as a renderer on the way out the door. And then we'll also talk about how you can make your own renderers for your in-house purposes. So as usual, begin by copying where you were before, and please read the analysis and give a shot on the extra credit. First person to get it right gets $5,000. That was a lie. Bitcoins, that's right. Play money, Bitcoins. In case I didn't emphasize it enough, copy and paste. Don't type. Got a long way to go. Your fan doesn't sound very good.
Thank you. Just what I need, another expense. You know, you used to be able to buy these things for $14.95. Now they're $39.95. Same thing. except now they don't have the extra USB ports,
Uh-huh.
so you have to buy those too. What's the world coming to?
Just take good care of that computer. Make it last another 5 years. All right. I'm getting my demo set up for the next step. You cool? Still on it or need a little time?
Well, I just figured out that it works. I haven't got to the... Simply by giving...
Wait a little bit or just go ahead and go through this? No, you could remove it from this if you wanted to. Put a pound sign on the very first column. Okay, I'll go ahead and begin. The idea here is we're making a package that is going to be shared with somebody else. Maybe it's shared with yourself when you put on a hat called DevOps versus developer. But by making a package that has everything self-contained in it, you can then distribute it to other people. When you make a package that needs to be distributed to other people, you need to say what are the minimum requirements for this package. Now, I didn't put debug toolbar as a requirement for the package because you don't want that in production. That's just for developers. So we want the developers to have to get it a different way. Okay. Then we do this line, config.include pyramid chameleon. This is one of the more important concepts of why Pyramid is different. This whole configuration system, plugin system. Somebody out there made this package called Pyramid under Chameleon. And it is the bindings for the Chameleon templating language to be used with Pyramid. They then put that package up available on the Cheese Shop, PyPy or Pippy. And you can then install that package. But just because you've installed that package doesn't mean Pyramid is aware that it needs to register Chameleon and do something. The Chameleon package has a little thing inside of it that says, when someone wants to use me in their project, run this configuration code. It's called the include me in the top level of the Chameleon package. And we want to include it in our application because we're going to use Chameleon for our templating language. We use that, and then we don't have to remember the 15 commands to make a new template engine in Pyramid. The creator of that did that for us, and we just include it. Okay. This then makes our views a heck of a lot simpler. We have the logic of the view. This is when this URL is requested, it is run with a request, the request object. We do our stuff, and we no longer return something crazy. We just return normal Python data, which makes this really easy to write tests for now. We don't have to go read a string of HTML and see whether the correct thing was done. We can deal with the Python as if it's Python, except on the way out the door, we have said this view has a renderer associated with it, and the renderer is this. When we did the config include of Chameleon, Chameleon told Pyramid, anything that ends in .pt is mine. Anytime there's a renderer ending in .pt, hand me the results, I'll run it, and hand you back the response. So this data is sent to that template, which gives us a string to return as part of this view. Any questions about that?
So you always pass a dictionary in?
You always pass something Python-y in. It could be a sequence of integers. It could be none. It could be true. It could be an object. It could be a function. It could be something that the template will then know what to do with. But almost exclusively when passing it to a templated-oriented renderer, you're going to pass a dict of names of variables that are available in that template. But there are other kinds of renderers you can write. You know, there's a JSON renderer that we will see later. You could have some kind of in-house renderer that serialized everything to XML and ran it through it, you know, .xsl. So that this was returning an XML data structure that ran through an XSLT processor. I wrote one of those at the beginning of Pyramid. Hate myself, obviously. That answer the question? Any other questions about renderers? So pretty cool idea here that you can write your own custom in-house renderers, even extending the existing one and just taking a lot of in-house custom semantics and putting it into a custom renderer so that people don't have to do as much work and make as many mistakes. Okay, and then in this one, we wanted to let the consumer of my code have the option of using this debug toolbar thing. So that in development mode, they get the debug toolbar, but in production mode, they have a different INI file that doesn't include the debug toolbar, because that's a big fat security hole. So instead of doing config.include in the code, I did the equivalent of config.include in the INI file. And you can see evidence of all kinds of knobs. That knob has no meaning unless you install Pyramid Chameleon or Pyramid Jinja 2 or one of those other things. And if you wrote your own add-on package for Pyramid, you could have my own dot first name or my own dot email address and read that and use it. Okay, I've got a Sphinx misfire on my templating. Anyone have an answer to this one? What caused Pyramid under Chameleon, the software package, to be loaded? Setup? Yeah, that thing. We said all the software that is required for this application to run, and then the person, meaning you, but the other person, the other you, ran Python setup.py develop and installed it, which went and got all the dependencies. No, if someone wasn't developing your software, if they were just using it, they would run install, Python setup.py install, and it would do something a little bit different, but it would still trigger all the dependencies being retrieved. Okay, and so I named some of the options that are available. I'm probably overlooking something. Okay. On the Pyramid website under templating, in the docs, I think they describe some of the templating languages. Otherwise, you would go to the cheese shop and look for the classifier for Pyramid and see all the Pyramid software. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. We have been doing views in Pyramid so far. We've been doing views as functions, standalone functions for every single URL in your site. You put the magic view decorator on it, and it becomes exposed to the outside world. What happens if you have several URLs in your site that are logically related to the same thing? Like, I want to view a blog post. I want to add a blog post. I want to edit a blog post. I want to delete a blog post. Maybe I want to copy it. Maybe I want to tag it. Maybe I want to do some of these other things. Wouldn't it be nice to organize all those operations into a class the way God and other object-oriented developers intended? View classes are a way to group groups of collections of views into a single entity that might share some setup state and logic and functionality. Pyramid has had support from for view classes from the very beginning, and this section will walk you through doing it. We will make some more views and logically relate them, and then see how you can not repeat yourself by taking some of those configuration directives, moving it up to the class instead of every single view. Begin. I need some more time? No? Okay, cool. Not much to this one. View classes seem to be a concept that really is hard for people to grok. So in this step, the only thing we did was take what we were doing and do it as a view class. We didn't introduce any new functionality. And so you see we have a normal Python class with a constructor. In this case, what Pyramid is doing is a two-phase thing. It goes and makes an instance of the view class and then finds which method to call and calls it. So there's a two-step process. When you're writing unit tests, you wind up having to do that yourself. But when you're just doing normal development, Pyramid does that for you. And this view class has a view and a view. So two views defined by routes in my under, and net. And what we did was rather than repeating the template, which is the same for both of those, we put that as a view default. Now that's a little bit of a weird example. Usually you'll have a different template per view, but there are a whole host of other things like security settings that are on views that you may put up at the view default level. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I would say that that is 1/1000th of your problem, or less. Python, it's only going to create one of these per request. It's not going to be doing thousands as you iterate over some list or something. Yeah. I mean, it's a good question, but it winds up being one of those micro optimizations. Okay. Is anybody feeling the afternoon blues yet? Do you want your PyCharm demo now, or you want to keep going? Shut up! I'm in Canada. It's up to you. You have to decide. You tired or you're not tired?
Not yet.
Okay, good. Onward. I have to wait till 5 of you go to the bathroom, and then I'll know that the coffee's over. Okay, on to the next one. Requests and responses. We were just talking about that. So far, we haven't gotten too much into what is the information coming in, called the request, and what can I do with it? And what is the information going out, called the response? What do I do with it? We've just been letting Pyramid handle the details. Pyramid uses a request-response system from something called WebOb, which, like Paste and a number of other things in Pyramid, were an attempt to create standard machinery across Python web frameworks, because we heart Python, and we love all the other Python web frameworks, and we want to share. They don't want to share with us, but we wanted to share with them. So we're using a shared request-response system, which we now are the sole users of. So in this, we're going to take a look in a little bit more depth about requests and response, how to manipulate them, get information out of them. All of this becomes really important later on when you're collecting information from forms. So read up on the background and get started on the steps. This also is a pretty short one. PyCharm. It's in the demo. Most people do print statements. But then people put import PDB, pdb.setTrace in the middle of code, and then go execute a web request, and then it stops right there, and you can do debugger stuff. So in PyCharm, you do that, but with the GUI. The really grown-ups write unit tests. The long version of this, starting at step number 3, I make you write unit tests for every step in this. Jackass.
We'd probably be already at the PyCharm demo.
You're right. No, you'd be at a different tutorial. Yeah, sell it, Steve. Sell it.
I should have worn my Pine Charm shirt today, I can tell.
They'll be handing them out at their booth, I think.
I'll get one for this year.
Okay?
There used to be lots of free modules that you could get when Juno was 1.5, but now everything costs money
Really?
because it's.
The venture capitalists are involved now.
So if you want anything nice, you
Yeah.
have to pay for it or write it yourself.
Yeah.
Then it switched.
Steve, it'll either be the under, and knit, and the route, or the view. Steve, here's what the under init should look like on the screen. Okay, you want me to make it bigger? Remind me not to drive when you're on the road. Yes. Okay, we'll get into this real quick. Nothing terribly interesting or sexy. This is pretty boring. When the view class, when a request comes in, we make an instance of it. It's handed the request, and we stash it on the instance, self.request. Then we can reuse it in one of these. So for example, in this one, we want to go find out what did you pass in after the question mark. That is available as request.params. We want to go get some data out of there, like the name, and if you went to a URL that didn't have that passed in, we'll use that as a default. This is the standard Python.get operator. And then I'm going to make the thing I'm going to return, the string, and then I'm going to return a string, and I'm going to affect the outgoing response. So we just interacted with the request. Now I'm going to interact with the response and tell the response, do a text plain on this. Don't give it all that fancy looking HTML. I could do other things with the response, like if I'm downloading a big binary file, I might want to do content disposition, blah, 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 and those 57 things. There's all kinds of things you can do to affect the response, putting security headers on it or something like that. Okay, so that is request and response. Let's see. We will skip the extra credit. Onward. Tired yet? Okay. We'll continue. We've done just the minor amount on routes. Routes is one of the two ways in Pyramid to hook a URL up to code that gets executed. It's the most popular way. It's used in Django, Flask, and everything else. And this one's going to get into routes a little bit more. This talks to you about why in Pyramid we do it more explicit than implicit like other systems. So read through this, and we're going to use our route definition to get some information out of the route for use in our view logic. Remember to do this. Remember to do this.
I think I realized why that happens is because we make it a separate step.
When you say that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You mean why it gets overlooked?
Yeah, and sometimes it's like step one, then step two.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's step one.
Yeah, it's because sometimes we have them edit setup.py, and you can't run setup.py develop until after you edit setup.py. We got to have a long think about this.
I have an idea, but
Please do the extra credit on this. Read the analysis, but please do the extra credit. Do you need a coffee? We could swap places. You caught up though? Okay. After all the crap you've gone through to get here, you finally have something that is meaningful. This. Now we're getting somewhere. This is something called a route, or a route definition. And it's a string with something special in it, curly braces. Those curly braces mean not just match this incoming URL, but match it and bind a variable. So whatever is in that hop of the URL, yes, I'm doing this so I can reach it. That's 1,000 times this has happened, so I'm used to it. The thing in the first hop of the URL will be available as first. The thing in the second hop of the URL will be available as last. I could put /howdy/xxx first. And so a URL of /howdy/xxx bar or foo, would match that route, and it would extract foo as the value for the variable first. So it's just a template that's being matched in there with a lot of weird extra stuff that can be done using the routing language. But at a minimum, what this lets us do is start dealing with URLs as specifiers for objects that we can do stuff with in our application, like look up a record in a database based on someone's first and last name. So we do that, and then let me scroll up. We extract that information from what's called the match dict. What matched up there? Put it in a dict. Let's call it the match dict. And then hang that off the request, because that's where you expect information about the incoming request to be. And then I'm going to extract that and return that in the data for this view. A Python dictionary for all the keys and values available in this view. All those keys and values get shuttled through the renderer, meaning this template. And so that matches that, that matches that, that matches that. Pretty simple. This is the way most web applications are programmed. Excuse me. Okay. How many of you did the extra credit? You can lie. Just raise your hand. I won't believe it. What happened when you clicked on it? Was it what you expected, John? Put you on the spot, man. Was it what you expected?
I wasn't sure if that would be the case, or if there was default programming the copy-paste.
Right. Was it what you expected? So really, this is thinking of URLs as identifiers of objects in your system. And so you have pointed at something that ain't there. And on the web, ain't there is 404.found. If you don't like that and feel like, well, you know, I actually think it should be something different, you can register with Pyramid an error handler that customizes that case and do something different.
I was kind of thinking it would be a parameter and boundary errors, not really 404.
There is no such thing in HTTP of parameter not found. That's the closest you got. So that could be extra information tacked on to the 404 not found. You could have a custom handler for the payload, but the HTTP code is still going to be 404. Any?
When I heard the word parameter, in this example, we're not using parameters.
Continue.
So parameters are those things that usually in the URL appear after a question mark.
Right.
Value pairs.
Good point. In the previous example, it was request.params.get for the question mark. Good point.
Whereas in this example, the URL with colleague first name, last name is the request itself.
Yep.
No parameters.
Yep. Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep. It's the stuff like up here, it's the stuff on the left-hand side of the question mark. So it's expected to be there. It's not data about this URL, the parameters. It's the URL. Correct. It is incorrect. It is failing before it gets to there, I believe. You could put a print statement or an import PDB to test me on it. But it's not finding a route that matches. It's looking at all the routes that I've added, all one of them. And none of those routes match. The pattern, correct. That's a better way to say it. It doesn't match the pattern. Any of the patterns. Since you are so obviously as a class interested in this topic, weird stuff probably would appeal to you. Warning, weird is an understatement. Yes, this is rated NC-13. We had a conversation, I believe you were asking about static assets. Was it you? Okay. So in this section, the web these days is more than HTML, boo-hoo. It's not links for command line browsers anymore. You got to serve up JavaScript, CSS, all these other kinds of things, PNGs. Those are in Pyramid referred to as static assets. There's no, Python isn't reading their contents and transforming them like templates or anything. So this section talks about how you can take a directory full of junk, static stuff, glue it into your URL hierarchy, and let Pyramid serve it for you as static assets at a URL. And then this talks a little bit about the kind of help Pyramid that can give you. After you do this, we will talk more about the question of extensibility, customizing, extra power, stuff like that. Does this really end in 30 minutes? Yeah. Speed up.
I'm copying as fast as I can.
Sorry. Okay, not much extra to this, except for this paragraph. This is the extra bacon that Pyramid puts on because bacon goes with everything. What if you have one package you were getting from your development team X, another package you were getting from your development team Y, and they both decided that all my JS is under /static. One of them is going to lose. Wouldn't it be better if you were in control of the URL space and you could say, no, actually, you're under X static and you're under Y static? That's what this lets you do. In your under a init, you said anything from this package's static is going to be available in my application under /static. So that when I ran this in my template, it said, hey, under init told me that this should be replaced with /static. This thing is called an asset specification. It has a format, something, something, / everything else. Pyramid interprets it, replaces it, shoves it out the door. Really cool solution to a pretty chronic problem of everybody colliding in the URL space. Steve, got anything to add to that? Good. Onward. Are we at the PyCharm point yet? Okay. Behold the PyCharm. Okay. I'm using the Dracula theme. Not hard to understand why it's called the Dracula theme. Darkula, sorry. I took the fun out of that joke. Okay, I'm in the view classes step that you just did a couple of steps ago, and this is the code and all that kind of stuff. And I am in an IDE called PyCharm that lets me have multiple things open simultaneously with syntax highlighting, and it knows how to go find everything and autocomplete, and it knows if you've made an error in Python, it tells you about the error, and you can mouse over it, and it says, dude, that's your error. Since that's a syntax error, it won't tell me that. And I can do a certain sequence like that, and it reformats all my code for me automatically and does all those text editor things you would expect. And it does all the IDE things that you would expect, like having multiple tabs and being able to go through and do search and replace across all files in your project, blah, 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 blah. But this one has special Python integration. And if you pay money for the professional version or the 30-day trial, you get special Pyramid integration. I, of course, paid for it. And so I'm going to show you the Pyramid integration. You can create these run configurations that let you run Python commands or system-level commands, or I can create a run configuration. I'll delete that one. A run configuration for the Pyramid server, pserv, our little friend. I'm going to call this something like, pserv poly. I'm going to say only run one of these at a time, and here's my configuration file, development.ini. And maybe I want to do the -- reload. Apply. Okay. Now, instead of having some crazy command, blah, 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 to run, I can do that. And it's running in here. Okay? Now, I can also do something wrong. That was the x = y. Look, it reloaded automatically. That's so cool. And, oh my God, it's an exception. Oh, but it's being handled by this guy. Oh my God, it restarted. It knew my ini file was important, so it restarted. Okay, so I will click on this, and I will get a traceback in PyCharm. Cool, that's pretty cool, traceback. But I can click on this line, and it will go and open that line for me. Yay, nice. Put me right where the error is. X = y. So x = 1. Now, that's all pretty cool, but what was this question about debugging? So, if I want to see more about what's going on right there, I put a debugger breakpoint there. And instead of running it with the run configuration, I'm going to run it with I'm going to tell Paulie to run with the debug configuration. So I click that. And PyCharm takes control of the Python interpreter, wires in some little instrumentation, and then tells Python to run Pyramid. So it's now running. I do that. And let's see. It didn't stop on my breakpoint. I think I need to run it again. Why not? This happened to me just a second ago. All right, well, it's something wrong with the way that I did my run configuration. What was it I did? Oh, the dash reload. That's what it was. I'll have to go talk to the PyCharm people about this. So, the debugger, I'm going to stop you, disconnect. Okay. So it stopped me at that breakpoint. It let me look in my environment, request, etc. I can step over the next line. And now I have X in my scope. I can open up this handy little guy and say, print, no way. So that gave me no result. I could say X. What is X at this point? X is 1. So that's the handy-dandy pyramid integration. It has templating, syntax highlighting for Jinja 2, Chameleon, and Mako. Anything else that you feel is worth mentioning?
So for a lot of folks, doing the installation before even getting to install Pyramid was really painful.
Oh, yeah.
This makes it vastly easier. Professional version makes it super easy.
I can do new project, and I can say, make me a pyramid project named step 1. And it will go generate all the code, wire it all up, and give me a pyramid button to click to run the server.
Super easy to install packages, setting virtual environments,
Yep.
projects. And they are really awesome to work with. Just the last PyCon, I actually got Dimitri to come over into a pyramid sprint, and we sat down and banged out all the ways of improving PyCharm for Pyramid with it, and we got it all resolved, and they incorporated that into their most recent release. So making it super easy to install Pyramid is great. So if you do get a chance, I'd say go take your code with you to the PyCharm or the JetBrains booth and say, I've got some code here. Well, can you show me how to use the debugger?
Yep. Yep, or on Windows. How can you make my life simpler on Windows? They've got a Python console that you can open a Python console inside the tool and not have some extra outside thing that you have to run.
Yeah, I have a terminal window open up in PyCharm.
And for those of you that might have to work with JavaScript, PyCharm includes all the JavaScript, HTML, CSS plugins from their other tools. So I, in PyCharm, can set a debugger in my browser. Sorry, I should have shown that. As part of the making a new project, you can make a new interpreter that is a virtual env. But if you've got an existing one, you go to PyCharm Preferences, and under my Python interpreters, these are all the defined interpreters, and right there, I can make a new virtual environment for this project based on the selected interpreter. And then once I've done that, I can manage all the software dependencies with a GUI instead of a GUI.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what version.
Yeah.
It's like all there.
Yep, yep,
So nice.
yep. You had asked that. I forgot to mention that, Mitch. Yep. It knows it's there, but it doesn't automatically select it for the project. It prompts you on that screen as one of the possible choices. Exactly, yep. Yep, 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 yep. Okay, I forgot to introduce Steve. Steve Piercy and I are the documentation guys documentation mules for the Pyramid project. He's done more work than I am. He deserves the credit.
One other thing about PyCon, if you happen to be a contributor to any of the Python
Oh,
projects,
they've got an open source license, right?
it's the exact same product as the professional edition, but they call it an open source license, and it expires every PyCon. So,
And you're supposed to use it only for your open source work.
yeah, and only for pilot. So if you do contribute to it either by writing documentation, correcting grammatical errors as small as that, that's a contribution.
Buying beer for the tutorial teacher.
I can give you examples of the correct.
Buying beer for your teacher, that's a contribution of some kind. Okay, we're going to have to go through these really quickly. I'm going to skip a couple of them. I think JSON is one of the more important ones for Ajax. So let's go through this one. In a nutshell, this is a different renderer. The most important part of this is I have a view that responds to a URL, but all the data coming out of it doesn't go through a template. It goes through a renderer, the built-in JSON renderer. Go. 6 minutes. That's what you get. If you get stuck on anything, raise your hand rather than fighting through it because we don't have enough time. Is it not explained? You are correct. I got a little lazy on that. Yes, views.py. Thank you, Steve.
It's not hello view, is it? Oh, I'm sorry.
How hard could it be, right? Yes, I believe you can. But go read the weird stuff to make sure. Okay, is anybody finished yet? All right, one more minute. Okay, we added another route available at the URL howdy.json. We then attached that route to this view, the hello view. And you can go to it now in two ways. You can go to it as /howdy or /howdy.json. If you do it with /howdy, it says this is the hello route, this one. And it calls this and returns this data through that renderer, and you get HTML back. But we can use the exact same view to return the data as JSON at a different URL, at the howdy.json, which is this route running through the renderer, and it returns it as JSON. It sets the content type to text/JSON or whatever, the accepts header, all the normal JSON-y kinds of stuff is managed for you. You didn't even have to write another view. You just used the existing view. Any questions about that? This is also kind of an interesting pattern. We stacked two decorators on the same method, and they both applied. Okay. This next one we won't do. We'll just talk about it. More stuff you can do with view classes and these decorators. Yes? Ajax is a way to talk to a server using data rather than markup, JSON data. So we are providing the server side of Ajax. I didn't put into the HTML any JavaScript that would have made the call to it. Yeah. That might be a meaningful thing to add to the demo to, in the HTML page, have a button that you click that does the JSON call and shows the data that came back. Right. Okay. So in this one shows a lot more that you can do with view classes, customization, different scenarios and stuff like that. We have a view class that has some defaults on it. And this view default is presuming everything is at hello unless you say it's a different route. And for example, this is the one that retrieves howdy first last with this renderer as a get request, an HTTP GET request, not sending data to the route, just walking up to it the first time. But if you post, and this one has a form in it, if you have a form and you post, you can post to the same URL. The same URL, but a different route. In that case, it matches the hello route, but it says, but if the hello route is a post method, do this one, not that one. So these are URLs that can behave differently based on how you're using them. And in fact, This is another variation on it. Again, same URL, same route, the hello route, but this one only matches if the delete button was clicked, meaning the form data has a variable called form.delete in it. That's going to be a post, but it doesn't match this post. It matches this one because that condition is met. And then it does that action. Pyramid is very unique on this. It has a rich set of stuff you can jam into the view config for when one thing should match versus another thing. Not only does it have a rich set of stuff that it provides, it lets you write your own things called custom predicates that are very unique to your business case. And so inside here, you could have your own matching condition. For example, anything under /internal might be a predicate you have called internal. And you could say, this is only run if you're at an internal URL. Okay. That was a fun one. I will give you a choice. In 5 minutes, we're not going to have time to do, but we can talk about. Do you want to talk about authentication and authorization? Do you want to talk about a different templating language? Or do you want to talk about forms? Or do you want to talk about databases? So, who wants to do authentication and authorization first? Yeah, that's a hard one. Who wants to do Jinja 2 as a different templating language? Okay. Who wants to do forms as the next one? Who wants to do databases as the next one? Hey. We saw what you did there. Okay, we will do forms and databases, breezing through it. Forms are a normal part of a web framework, except Pyramid doesn't include anything. Ha, 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 joke's on you. Doesn't include a templating language, so it certainly doesn't include a form system. Instead, there are several different form systems available as Pyramid add-ons, because everybody has an opinion, and everybody's opinion is different when it comes to form systems. The creator of Pyramid, Chris McDonough, stupidly released even more open source software called Deform and Colander, a system for form handling and schema validation. Both very well supported under Pyramid. So in this step, we add the packages for Deform and Colander, make them available in our application, Deform. Deform depends on Colander, so we don't have to make that dependency ourselves. Then we say, well, you know, Deform has these pretty looking forms that have CSS and JavaScript in them. I need all that to be available under Deform static in my application. So then I have my views under views.py. And I have some data that I'm looking at, and I have a wiki page as a schema. This means that my form will have a title and a body. Both of them are required. One is a simple string. One of them has a rich text editor on it. And this is my view class, which has some shared stuff common across all the views. And I have a view for walking up to my wiki page. And then I have a view for adding a wiki page. And this needs to get a form. This is a self-posting view. So it has one mode when you say, give me the form, and has another mode of, okay, here's my form data. All at the same view and same URL. It knows the difference between those two by looking and seeing if the submit button was clicked. If the submit button was clicked, we're going to do all of this. We're going to get the data out. We're going to validate it. If the validation fails, we're going to send it back as an invalid form. If the validation succeeds, we're going to make a new wiki page. And then we're going to redirect to that new wiki page. And then we're going to allow viewing a wiki page, and then we're going to allow editing a wiki page. A lot repeated between those two, this being the big difference. We don't make a new one, we just edit an existing one. So to summarize, the Deform way of doing things is I have a schema that says, this is my form, this is what my form looks like. These are the widgets and the constraints and what's required, what's an integer, all that other kind of stuff. A very rich system for specifying the schema of a form. And then I can auto-generate an HTML GUI in one line just by rendering the form. Either rendering the form without data for an add form or rendering the form with data. Let's see. This way, with the existing data. Okay, then this is my templated page. Oh, sorry. This is my add edit template. It needs to insert some stuff for all the static resources, the JavaScript and CSS into form. And then it just does that one line, which contains all the HTML generated over in my view. So stepping back, the form is a form system, one of the form systems for Pyramid. It lets you define schemas, validate data, and generate forms. And a lot of documentation for it. Any questions on that? Again, all of this is available on the Pyramid website. You can go through it and more topics afterwards. Next, look at all that stuff we're skipping. We are so late. It was that coffee break that did it. Databases. Can't do a good web framework without having databases. Oh, wait, Pyramid doesn't include anything. So it doesn't include database support. Instead, it lets you choose your database support, unlike some other Python web framework, which shall remain nameless. We, though, prefer and have a strong affinity with SQL Alchemy, Flask does as well, which is considered the best way to integrate databases into Python. It's something called an ORM, an Object Relational Mapper. It takes stupid square data in your database and makes it look like Python data in your Python application. So that's what we use in this section. We use a SQLite database table. We hook it up to the forms that we just created for our wiki application. And we get some more stuff in here. One of the biggest points that we believe in Pyramid, and nobody else does, is we believe in transactions. We believe very, 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 very much in transactions. And so we provide something called Pyramid under TM that hooks your Python and your database's transaction into the same transaction scope. So if your template has an error, it rolls back the transaction in your database. And it does that by, on the request on the way in, it starts a transaction, and then your WSGI application runs, and then just before your WSGI application finishes, the transaction manager looks at all the stuff, decides whether everything is good, and says commit, 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 commit. So you can have 5 databases plugged together, and it will roll them all back if your template has an error. So that's a really cool aspect to the Pyramid approach. What all the other systems make you do is every one of your views has a begin transaction and an end transaction. And if some other part of your system fails, you're in trouble. Okay, we also said, how cool is it that we've got this configuration file, this INI file, where your customers can specify the path to the database. It's not hard-coded in Python. It's in this non-programming language configuration file. We need a way, so we do some more stuff. We do the standard SQL Alchemy, make an engine, and get it into the environment. And we need a way for people to initialize an empty database with all the schemas and stuff. So we wrote a little console script which goes to my code, figures everything out, and makes a table. And you run that from the command line. Let's see. With this command. The script we just wrote is run with our INI file and it executes a bunch of SQL Alchemy commands to create a table. It could also jam a bunch of data in. What does our code in SQL Alchemy look like? We create a model, in this case a wiki page, that inherits from SQL Alchemy's base, which is imported up there. And I've got three things, three columns, a UID, a title, and a body. And then SQL Alchemy does the rest to make that look like a Python object. SQL Alchemy does some cool things for me. I can do queries saying, hey, database, generate a SQL query that finds all the page tables and then order them in alphabetical order based on title. Lots of other rich ways to do queries. That gives me back a Python-looking thing that I can then use. One of the coolest things about this is from the last step, which was just Python data, to this, which was database data, the template didn't change at all. And I believe my views almost didn't change at all. They didn't know that you're no longer dealing with Python data, you're dealing with database data. So that's SQL Alchemy integration. At the end of this, you want me to do the demo for this? I'll go ahead and run this one. Oh, something somewhere is using that port. Oh, I didn't run the generator. I was trying to avoid checking it into the repository, the database table. Let's see. All right, I've left my thing in a bad state because of the tutorial. But if you stick around afterwards, I will fix it and then show it for anybody that's interested. That is the tutorial in a nutshell. The other things we didn't cover were the very rich system in Pyramid for finding out who someone is, what roles they have, and whether they're allowed to perform a particular operation. Most web frameworks make no attempt at providing a security model for you to plug into. You're on your own completely. They may help you with authentication, but they don't help you with authorization, permissions, ACLs, roles, groups, all those kinds of things. Very neat aspect for Pyramid that is extremely flexible Little complicated because of the flexibility, but can solve lots of problems, and you're way better off letting your framework solve security problems than you are figuring it out yourself. And then finally, Jinja 2 shows how easy it is. You don't like the smell of one templating language, use a different one. Use one that smells better. Or if you have another one, just plug it in yourself. Now, on to the best 2 words in any presentation. In conclusion, please take a moment, go to our friends at SurveyMonkey, fill in that form, give me the highest grades possible. 11. This one goes to 11. And you can follow up with the tutorial later if you want to, but I suggest going to the Pyramid site and getting the full one rather than the 3-hour one, the one that has been tested and all that other kind of stuff. Any questions before wrapping up?
Could you add up there, like, how to get support? Like, if there's the email list.
That's actually in the Pyramid docs, right?
Yes.
So I'll bring that page up. I'll bring that page up while leaving that URL up.
Yeah, basically, where to go next if you need more help.
So this is the website for the Pylons project, which is multiple pieces of software, including Pyramid. So under Pyramid documentation, for help getting Pyramids set up and need help, click support. So this talks about the different ways to get support in Pyramid.
There's lots of people who don't have lives running out on IoT.
Correct. Yeah. All right. Did you have something you wanted to ask about or mention? Okay. Anybody have anything for closing comments? Thank you very much.